So in 1999, BBC did a special about Luzia. This is Luzia, the oldest remains found at the time in the Americas. And as you can see, this is very much what you would consider a Negro. And this hurt a lot of people's feelings. I mean, this made a lot of people mad. And it wasn't so much a big deal until people really started talking about it almost 20 years later, to the extent they burned down the museum. Let me show you why they're so mad. Listen to this.
Walter Neves is a physical anthropologist at Sao Paulo University in Brazil. He's been using a standard and reliable archaeological measure, the shape of the skull, to find out what race she belonged to.
91.
He fully expected Luzia to be a Mongoloid, but then he fed the measurements into the computer.
When we start running the computer and seeing the results, it was amazing because we realized that the statistics, the quantitative analysis we were doing was not showing these people to be Mongoloid. In fact, the analysis was showing these people as anything except Mongoloid.
That to me is a Negroid face that has all the features that you associate with a Negroid face. The proportions of the face, it doesn't say anything about it being a Mongoloid.
The first reaction was not to believe in it. But as the results, repeated so many times, and the result is exactly the same thing. They are very similar to nowadays Aborigines and Africans, and no similarity at all with Mongoloids in Asia. This is very clear in South America. All populations I have in my data set from the whole South America, okay, from 7,000 to the present, they are absolutely classic Mongoloid. And everything I have with more than 9,000, okay, is absolutely non-Mongoloid.
So, of course, we all know who really didn't like to hear that, right? So when articles like this came out, they were really, really disturbed. Now, your kids can get on the internet and read about Luzia, who they said was a Negroid, right? And like I said, this had people upset because that means, guess what? Negroes were the first people on the American continent, which is a fact. I mean, Luzia is far from the only evidence to prove that. But this is just one of those big ones that really, 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 really disturbed them. So, what did they do?
And we're back with a new video as a massive fire ripped through the National Museum of Brazil in Rio de Janeiro. The museum recently celebrated its 200th anniversary and had 20 million historical artifacts in its collection, including a collection from ancient Egypt. And there's word now that most of the items have been destroyed. Brazil's president calls it a tragedy. The fire broke out after the museum had closed for the day. The two fire hydrants closest to the museum weren't working.
Oh, man.
The cause of that fire is unknown.
So the fire happened in September of 2018, September 2nd to be exact. And then at the end of October, almost 2 months later, out of the blue, some random firefighter all of a sudden discovered Luzia's fossil and was recovered, right? Now, first of all, that already don't make sense. Look at this building. You see it's burnt out, but they recovered Luzia. And then a month after that, what did they do? They decided all of a sudden to drop a new report and say that a study by 72 different people in all these different countries decided that Luzia didn't have African features and they were actually just Amerindian. So somehow, after the fire, they recovered Luzia's skeleton and they did a new study, and now it's all of a sudden they are totally different people. And they tried to redo the face and make a new face. Now this is 2 months after a fire that burnt down an entire museum. I dare say that they burnt the museum down because of this artifact, because it started getting popular. And then, this is the funniest part. First of all, they never did a DNA test on it in the first place because it was too old for that in the way it was found. And secondly, all of a sudden now, they got a DNA test 2 months after the museum burnt down and this artifact actually burnt. So now they just pop up with I'm just going to say, some random skull. They And it's nowhere in the world you're going to say that this was that original Luzia skull. All of a sudden, you got a new skull and you ran DNA on it. And now, oh yeah, no, it ain't what we thought. She ain't Negroid. She's Amerindian. Man, these people are devious and treacherous. And so now you see these online internet trolls trying to use this fake study to say, oh, she was never a Negro. But it's nonsense, and we're going to keep proving why it's nonsense. Check this out. Now, this is an article that was published in the New York Times 2 days after the fire, September 4th, 2018. Let's scroll on down. It's a particular paragraph I like to read for y'all, so y'all can see what I mean when I say this. They just made up some nonsense out of the blue. Talking about they DNA tested and all of that. They did no such thing. Now, check this out. Dr. Reich is a specialist in ancient human DNA, using such material to study our species migrations around the planet. They still stalking us out of Africa thing. He was unaware of any retrieval of DNA from the Luzia fossil, meaning they have never pulled any DNA from this fossil. But while no sufficiently preserved DNA has so far been reported from bones older than 1,000 years in South America, technology for the study of ancient DNA is advancing by leaps and bounds, and a specimen like Luzia might have concealed genetic secrets. So 2 days after the fire, they're saying they have never even tested any fossils older than 1,000 years in South America, right? But 2 months later, all of a sudden, they've done a DNA test on a burnt up fossil. Really? I mean, do y'all really believe that? The answer is no. That's complete nonsense. They did not do a DNA test on this fossil or on Luzia. They did not. And they just can't stand the fact that the scientists said that she was Negroid. And they based that off the shape of her skulls, and they could make the difference between her and the Mongoloids, right?
This is very clear in South America. All populations I have in my data set from the whole South America, okay, from 7,000 to the present, they are absolutely classic Mongoloid. And everything I have with more than 9,000, okay, is absolutely non-Mongoloid.
So even if they had done a DNA test, they would still have to try to explain why there's a difference in the skulls between the Mongoloids and Luzia and all the people before her. All right. And they can't do it. So now let's look at this part too. All right. They were actively trying to rescue items out of the museum while it was burning. Look here, number one. They show you number one. Luzia's on the second floor upstairs. She is not one of the people that was getting rescued out of that building. All right. There is no way in the world that they actually rescued this fossil. They did not. It's just a complete story. And this mysterious firefighter randomly found it all of a sudden. Nonsense, man. These people are liars. The fact is, they just can't handle the truth.
They are very similar to nowadays Aborigines and Africans, and no similarity at all with Mongoloids in Asia.
That to me is a Negroid face that has all the features you associate with a Negroid face. The proportions of the face, it doesn't say anything about it being a Mongoloid.
So the bottom line is they never did a DNA test on Luzia, not before or after the fire. I don't know what they claiming they did, but it's fraud. Okay, BBC did a whole video, a whole special about Luzia, and they let you know she was Negroid. And if you were going to debunk it, as they say, then you needed to make a video to prove that, especially if it's 20 years later. The video's so much better than it was 20 years earlier, right? So nah, it's a fraud, it's a lie, and they can't tell the truth. And we're going to keep giving them the truth anyway. So, all right, y'all. Till next time.